I kept seeing these posts going around saying Fruit Loops in Canada don't have all of the artificial flavorings and chemicals and colorants that Fruit Loops in the United States do. And we're going to go to Kellogg's and we're going to petition for them to change their cereal. And we're going to get the artificial colors and the chemicals out. But then you go and read the ingredients list for the Canadian version or the UK version, and it's still garbage. It's still complete garbage. So I was super confused when that was happening. I was like, have we lost the plot? I say this with all due respect and love. And I know a lot, and I said it on my stories, and people came at me and said, well, it's a start. And I'm like, yeah, kind of. How about we just don't eat Kellogg's? How about we just boycott Kellogg's altogether? Which is ultimately what they ended up doing. The movement went that way. They went to Kellogg's. They protested out front. They had the petitions. Kellogg's would not open their doors. So immediately the movement shifted to let's cancel Kellogg's. Let's boycott Kellogg's. And I'm sitting here thinking, I wouldn't, like, I've never allowed my daughter, she's 24. I never allowed Fruit Loops in her mouth in the first place. And you can call me snobby if you want, but I was hip to this a long time ago. This is not my first rodeo. And I'm not dissing anyone who's just come around to waking up to what's going on with the food supply. Like, welcome to the cause. But I've been at this a really long time, and there's just no Fruit Loops anywhere in our house. There's no Fruit Loops. There's no place for Fruit Loops in a human diet, period. Canadian version, American version. The Canadian version, the first ingredient is sugar. And the second ingredient is basically some kind of highly processed cornmeal. Like, it's just garbage. Like, that's the human kibble. Cereal is literally human kibble, especially the way that they process the grains. There is some information out there suggesting that when you high heat rice, for instance, to make it dry out and puff like that, you're doing something to it that's really not great downstream in the body. So there's just no cereal. There's no place for cereal in a healthy human diet, in my opinion. If you want to eat some kind of granola made out of whole grains, not a huge fan, but I definitely do put a little tiny bit of granola on my food sometimes for flavor, maybe a little bit of sweetener with, honey, sweetened granola. If you want to have some kind of cereal once in a while as like a treat, but it's not breakfast. There's like no place in my head where cereal is breakfast, because the root problem here is that the childhood obesity epidemic is being driven by metabolic dysfunction. And so replacing a chemical-laden, artificial dye-laden cereal with a ultra-processed carbohydrate, GMO grain with sugar as the first ingredient on the label is not a solution. This is not what we put in our children's mouths if we want them to have good insulin signaling throughout the day. This is not the first food we choose in the morning. That's the ultimate way to jack up their insulin response all day long and have it go haywire and make them hungry again by 10 a.m. How many of you, I'm guilty. I grew up eating cereal. I get it. And my parents thought they were doing me a favor. And I would eat cereal in the morning before I went to school because you have to eat something, Tina. So I'd eat cereal. And by 10 a.m., I was passed out on my desk. And the next thing I wanted was coffee and a donut, right? Like, it's not a great process to go through. This is blood sugar dysfunction. We're doing it to our children by feeding them refined, ultra refined carbohydrates, sugar laden, ultra refined carbohydrates. I don't care if the colorants are real and the chemicals are out. Like, you see what I'm getting at? Start the day with protein. Start them with real protein, like eggs and bacon and some kind of, maybe some meat from the night before, leftovers. If you're vegan or vegetarian, fine, go for it. Whatever you want to do. I can't counsel you because I have not a clue where that fits into a healthy human diet either. Don't come at me. That's just where I stand. It's okay. We can have different opinions. I was a vegetarian for 10 years, wrecked my health. I've had a very difficult time getting vegetarian patients and vegan patients healthy, but I do know some of you exist out there, and more power to you. I think genetically you probably got a different inclination, and it's not one size fits all. But I do know that starting with a good source of protein in the morning is probably the best way for all of us humans to start our day and have our blood sugars regulated. So I pause because I get that it's a start, but also there are a huge group of us who just haven't been eating Kellogg's for decades. And so it reminds me of the time when I had a patient who got diagnosed with cancer, and she came in and she said, "You'd be so proud of me. I quit drinking Coca-Cola every day." She was having a Coke every day, or I don't know, some kind of soda. We all call it Coke or whatever. She was having a soda every day, and she decided to replace it with diet soda. And I was like, no, no, you've lost the plot. You see what I'm getting at? If we really want to address the root cause of what's happening to our children and their ill health as a whole, as the epidemic, then we need to address the big, dare I say, elephant in the room, because it's glaringly obvious that the problem is metabolic dysfunction at its core. It's insulin resistance, and it's lack of muscle mass, and it's lack of exercise, and it's lack of sunlight, and it's lack of proper sleep, and it's lack of proper nutrition of a whole foods, nutrient dense diet.